Hello. Welcome to my webinar, The Explanation of Jobs in the Music Industry. I've enabled the chat. If anyone is there, please type something in there so that I can see you. I've also enabled the Q&A. So if you have any questions during it, just tap on the Q&A and ask the question, and I will try to answer it promptly. Can you see the explanation of the music industry? Nabil, thanks for coming back. Hello. Can you guys all see the explanation of the jobs in the music industry? I want to make sure that that's working correctly. Yes. Anyone else? Can you see it? Make sure I'm not crazy. Need to zoom out. Can you only see part of it? Sorry, I'm still new to the program, everyone. So you guys can't see the full thing right now? Let me try turning off the chat for a second and see if that maybe makes it work a bit better. Is that okay? I'm going to turn back on the chat, but let me know if while the chat was off, if you could see the whole thing. Okay, so were you able to see things when the chat was off? Is that better now? Can everyone see the explanation of jobs in the music industry? Hello, you guys there? Much better. Excellent. Okay. So we don't have everyone in here right now, but I'm just going to start because they are late and it's therefore their fault. Okay. So now I should be visible. Can everyone see me? Can anyone see my face? Type 1 if you can see my face. Yes. Oh, hello, it works. Excellent. Great news. Okay. So we're going to start then. Just pulling out a computer that has all of my notes. To the side. Okay. So first I'm using some features here today. All these are kind of like my warm-up ones before I really start promoting a little bit further and bigger. So you guys are my guinea pigs. Okay. So I'm going to make a poll. How many of you have worked in the music industry before? So this is like professionally dealt with shows that are more than 100 people or 200 people, or done something for a label, etc. So I've started a poll. You guys should be able to see that poll. Can you see the poll and can you vote on it? No. Okay, cool. Anyone else for voting? How many of you worked in the music industry before? Volunteering at festivals does count, sure. Okay, so mainly people who really don't have much of an idea about this stuff to begin with. Cool, that's great. All right, so okay, so in the music industry, there are many jobs that exist. I'm going to go through the ones that I think you're most likely to interact with, the ones that I think are the most important. But this by no means means that this is all the jobs in the music industry. Okay, but this should be pretty robust. Only really if you get heavily involved will you probably start interacting with other jobs. These are all the jobs that I know almost every company in the industry has, or at least has someone who's filling that post title. Okay, so a post, for anyone who's not familiar with this definition of the word, a post is a job. It's a hat. It's something that needs to be fulfilled. So a good example of that is most companies have some sort of a mail out department. They mail out postcards or letters or something like that. That's not necessarily just one guy whose sole job is to mail letters. It might be the receptionist. So she is the receptionist, but she's also doing the mailing out post. Just so you guys have some understanding of it. Okay. So now, the first thing I'm going to go over is the basic jobs. Then I'm going to go over some of the ways that they all interact with each other. Okay. So first you have tour. So along a tour, you have a tour manager. You have a merch person, guy or girl. You have a guitar tech. You have a general tech, which can also be a guitar tech. A good explanation of the jobs right there are there's a guitar tech and a drum tech. And generally, there might be also a guitar tech for each guitarist or also a bass tech. On smaller acts, you'll generally just have one guy who kind of knows a bit about everything, usually specializes in guitars, right? So that's a general tech. This is someone whose job it is to make sure to kind of set up the instruments before the band plays, to replace broken strings, drumsticks, etc. Put on a head mid-show, make sure the show goes on. Okay. So then you have a front of house, which is it's a sound guy. So that's the guy who stands in the back of the room. He controls the way that everything sounds to the audience. A lot of bigger acts will actually have their own sound guy, and that's where the term front of house usually gets used. So that's position. You have a monitor guy. His job is to directly manage the speakers that go back to the artist. He's usually standing to give you some reality on this. So here's a band on stage. This is where the front of house would be. So the band's here playing to an audience. Front of house is behind them so you can hear what the audience hears. A monitor guy is right here. He's to the side of the artist so that he can see smaller gestures that they might be pointing to him, and you can also hear a little bit more of what they're actually hearing. Okay? Make sure I'm not missing anything. Cool. All right. So then you have a driver. So the end tour, it's long drives a lot. A lot of it is playing 6 to 7 days per week, and maybe one day off. And each day you have to play a different show. Anywhere from 2 hours to 10 hours to 14 hours away from each other. That can be really hard to stay up the whole day preparing for the show, doing interviews, doing press, writing songs, all that. Play a show late at night, and then also drive for 6 hours that day. Very hard on the human body. It's really hard for keeping morale up. Once you get into, that's like on a van tour. Once you get into a bus tour, it becomes a state law or a country law that you have to have someone with a special type of license to drive that vehicle. He has to get a certain amount of hours of sleep every day required by law for like the big buses or for some of the conversion vehicles in between a van and an actual bus. So you have a driver. Then you have a photographer or a videographer, generally a photographer. That is someone whose job it is just to take pictures of everyone. Usually someone who's very good at taking pictures. This can then be used to show what that band's doing to the world, to help bolster whatever image they have. It can be very, very important act, especially when you're dealing with a popular act or an act that has a younger or female fan base. Then you have an assistant tour manager. This is really only on giant tours do you have an assistant tour manager. An assistant tour manager is a position where, on a giant tour where there's a lot of duplicates of these jobs, you might have 5 different merch people on an arena tour, and everything extends past that and further than that. You might have 6 general techs and then a guitar, or then a tech for each individual member. There's a lot of things that can happen. So on a larger tour, having an assistant tour manager is kind of like, he just helps the tour manager do what he's doing. The position of tour manager itself, now that is a position where you're in charge of making sure everything continues to happen. You're also in charge of the money. So at the beginning of a day, switch really quick to my tablet. Okay. So you have a day. Can everyone see that? Okay. So you have Still didn't work very well. Okay, so, oh god. Load in. That looks awful. I'm sorry for everyone. You have load in, you have the show. Performance. And then after show. Okay. Does everyone see that, right? If anyone has any questions during this, please feel free to go into the Q&A. It should be a little question mark, say Q&A on it. You can ask any individual questions. If I go say a word that you don't understand, feel free to fill it up as much as you want. Okay, so you have load in, the show, the performance, and then the after show. Now, to give you an example of how these jobs kind of work together, you have a TM. Right. So the TM will actually. Boop, boop. So a TM will go into a venue when a band arrives, figure out with the staff exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it, where to put the van, where to put the equipment, how the show is going to run, makes all those connections. And then you have the techs who then go in, bring all the equipment in, start setting the show. The tour manager kind of makes sure that everything's going where it should be. This is also where the front of house would go. Then once you have the show start, right, so once doors open, you have the opening acts. So you have the opening acts, right? And now the tour manager actually has to stay busy pretty much the entire day. I don't know if that's out of the screen. Yes, it was. Okay. So the tour manager stays busy the entire day. He has to constantly be worrying about what everything is doing, where people are going, making sure everything's still staying in order, making sure that all the techs and the front of house guy and the monitor are all doing stuff. You have a sound check. Actually, I forgot about that. Right. There, you have a sound check. So once you load in, that's when the, trying to erase some of this. Okay, so yeah. You have the sound check. Which is where the techs will load the equipment. That's when the artist will try to, do a couple songs. You have the front of house guy feeling out the room, testing out the room, and all of that stuff. Okay, so then a tour manager at the end of the show, right? He has to get, that's where he gets all of his money. That's where he has to collect from the entire show, from the venue owner, all that stuff. And then during the show, he's keeping everyone on time, all right? So that's what a tour manager is. He only interacts with the tour. In between tours, he's usually doing something called advancing. So advancing, I think this come back to me. So advancing is the job of sending out all the information beforehand and getting it back in. So a booking agent will book a show, and then a tour manager. That's the end of a booking agent. Then a tour manager separately will go and reach out to all these people and going, okay, well, I have a sheet here that says the booking agent said we're going to get $500 for the show, that there's going to be some food for us to eat, that we're supposed to go around at this time. And from that point on, the tour manager will continue to have communication with every single person, every single promoter on the tour to make sure that everything will happen the way it's supposed to. So that is tour, and that is a tour manager. Does anyone have any questions on tour managers? Okay. I see a couple questions. How does one become a tour manager? Sorry about that. So in a smaller band, such a band that really hasn't gotten their name out there, is it typical to see the members of the band handling some, if not all, of these jobs? Yes, that's an excellent question. So that's why I went over the word post, because these are all posts here. Let's see if there's a way for me to... No, I don't know how to do that. Okay, so hopefully you guys are taking notes back home. These are all posts. So these are all jobs that have to be done as part of a show. You have to have someone who's setting up guitars. You have to have someone who's changing strings. You have to have someone who's selling merch. You have to have someone who's doing front of house. You have to have all of these jobs, right? A photographer and an assistant TM are a little bit more optional, but all the jobs have to exist. So when you first start touring out and say there's only 5 of you, you might have one guy who really handles a lot of the merch. You might have another guy whose job it is to collect the money at the end of the night, make sure that everything's going according to plan, keep in touch with promoters until you're playing. You might have another guy who's really good with electronics and guitar stuff, and he's the one who will, be making sure everyone is replacing their equipment when needed to be before the tour, and on the tour might help out with fixing the intonation of something or making sure that you have everything you need. A tour manager, like the natural tour manager in the group, which set it off, the band I was a part of, had someone named Andrew Cram for a while, but before and after him, I was there. While we did have some hired on tour managers for some of the gigs, a lot of the responsibility of that fell onto me, and on times when we had a fire tour manager or were without one for a small run, I would then pick up those duties. I just said duties. Okay, so then the other question was there... Oh, what just happened? Sorry. Okay, so the other question is, how does one become a tour manager? It's a great question. Generally, people become tour managers because they started doing merch. Merch is like the introductory job in the music industry, or at least in the touring industry. If you can prove that you're very good with money, keep books on scale and everything, like a tour manager's job is to make sure everyone else is in line. That includes keeping track of all the merch money that's made, everything that's spent. You're essentially an accountant and a babysitter and a boss all at the same time, but also an employee, because while you are supposed to tell a band what to do and when to be there, they're also the ones who are technically paying you. So you have to operate with a certain amount of respect and courtesy, because after all, how they feel about you determines whether or not you're going to continue having work. Okay, so hopefully that answered that. All right, so does anyone else have any questions based on the touring industry? I'm going to assume that's a no. Okay, so next you have a management company. Now, a management company is generally what someone talks about when they say someone got discovered, okay? Management has a few less positions. The main job of a management company is to make sure that the artist's best interests are being taken care of, right? So it's their job. A lot of people confuse the duties of a management company with a label. They're actually quite different. Management company is there to, there's a couple different jobs or posts at a management company. You can have one guy who does all these jobs, or you can have a company that has different people who do these jobs. Generally, those have lots of other acts on them. Sometimes in a really big act, you'll have, a management company that only has 3 or 4 acts, but still has several people working at it, but not necessarily. You have a big picture. You have a day-to-day, right? So those are two management classifications. You have someone for endorsements, and you often have an in-house graphic designer and an in-house booking agent. So generally, managers will sign artists before labels sign them. This is someone who, like a really, I don't know, well-known interpretation of a manager is like that, guy who's hanging around that, younger country star and going, oh, I'm going to make you a star. I'm going to make you big, whatever. That guy. That is called a manager, right? So that's someone whose job it is to have lots of connections. It's their job to have lots of experience, or at least to have the know-how, the marketing idea, a big picture specifically. It's his job to go, okay, so here we have this artist, and they're going to start here, they're going to get here, and this is how they're going to do it. And then they use their connections, their knowledge of what works versus what doesn't work to make all of those things happen. Okay? So then you have a day-to-day. Now, a day-to-day is a day-to-day manager. So a big picture manager and a day-to-day manager. Day-to-day's job is to handle the operations as they come up. Different than a tour manager, a day-to-day wouldn't be traveling with the band. Day-to-day would be more in charge of making sure that everything on a minute aspect goes according to plan. Okay, so Tuesday you have these interviews. Wednesday you have these things. They work more directly with the band. Generally, a band won't have all of the most connection with a big picture unless your big picture is also filling the post of a day-to-day. All right. Anyone have any questions? Nope. Okay. So continuing on. So then you have someone who's in charge of endorsements. So we all are familiar with artists who have, get Nikes for free, or maybe get paid to wear Nikes, or have a certain beverage, do all these things. This is another job at a management company. So somebody is sitting there, and it's his job to just have these connections with specifically these types of brands and companies that'll pay an artist money to, or just give them free things in order to wear them or use them. Often, especially in the scene, like the smaller scenes, people playing less than 10,000 people a night, you're not going to be getting any money for using any of these things. It's just free, which is cool. Oh, cool. Rockstar will give you 10 free cases, and you have to post 2 pictures of you drinking a Rockstar a week. Generally how that works. And then in-house graphics, you'll have someone there often who just makes different types of web graphics. Sometimes he'll make merch for the band for free. Very rarely, though. He'll just be doing a couple different jobs, making things happen. Then you have an in-house booking agent, often because management companies find acts before they go anywhere. They'll have someone who helps that act have shows and go on tour when they're a smaller band before the management company is able to get label interest. Right. So with most people, that's kind of like a missing step they don't understand. They think that you're either just going to start, try and hit up a bunch of labels and get signed. When really, generally, it's a management company that will find an act. This isn't what happened in Set It Off's case. It isn't what happens in every single case, but it's much more common. Okay, so the act will be found by a management company who kind of change a couple things about the way things are operating, and then start negotiating some sort of deal with some labels that they have worked with in the past. Manager who actually knows what he's doing is a very, very huge commodity in a band, and is really a giant make or break. A really famous guy who was a manager back in the day was a man named, sorry, I wrote it down. Oh, Lou Pearlman. He also did start a management company, or a label, which is separate, but he did lots of management duties. He was the guy who put together NSYNC and Backstreet Boys and O-Town LFO. He later got put in jail for a Ponzi scheme, which is a certain type of scam where you steal money from people. But that's what a manager is. Okay, so then moving on, we have a label. So whereas a management company is working for the best interest of the artist. It's his job to make sure each artist have a career that skyrockets. He makes money specifically from the artist, generally a gross percentage. So he makes 15%, 20%, everything the artist makes, whether that's writing songs, doing royalties, having their shirt sold in Hot Topic, any of those things. Generally, that's done through generally that's done through that. So anyways, so a label, you have an A&R, which is the person who communicates with the artist directly. You have a label owner, so that's the person who writes the checks. Essentially, a label is a giant bank. Getting signed to a label is getting a really shitty loan that also has distribution. I'll go into distribution in a little bit, but essentially, management, or essentially a label just finances the things. They deal a little bit less. They'll often control what they're releasing. They have the option at any point to not put out an album, but that doesn't mean that the artist can go and sign to another label or put out something themselves. They sign an artist for what's called option periods, and a lot of labels will have control of the artist because they'll have a certain amount of option periods that they own. Each time the artist wants to put it out, they have to officially refuse in order for the artist to go and do something somewhere else. But generally, you're kind of pigeonholed into doing whatever the label wants because you're trying to get them to put out your songs. So you have an A&R, so that's the person you talk to. Hey, I want to put out this album. These are the marketing things I want to do. This is how we want to do it. And then that A&R has to then go over to an owner. That owner then goes, oh, okay, well, I'm willing to put $20,000 into this. This is what I am okay with. This is what I isn't. There is I said isn't. There's a record contract. Sorry, there's a question. So there's a record contract that illustrates certain points of the deal, and the owner has to adhere to those points. It might say $10,000 per album. But there's a lot of leeway. If you're friendly with your owner, if you're friendly with your A&R, they might give you $15,000 for an album as opposed to $10,000, just because they believe that that investment will return a high profit, or because they like you and they want your career to go well. Okay, sorry, I got asked. When you said you get things for free in management and you go touring in different countries, do they pay you? Do they pay for you? No. A big misconception, and something that kind of used to happen in certain cases, but does not happen at all anymore, really, is nobody pays you to go on tour. You as an artist are a business owner, meaning you get paid last. So I'm going to go back to my screen sharing business. Illustrate this a little bit better. Okay, so okay, so I'm sure everyone can see it okay. Okay, so here is a meter. Okay, so here's a meter. Now you have this meter illustrates 100%. Okay. So that's all of the money that comes in. So say that on a tour, you have stands for $10,000. Okay. So you first have, but for the sake of this, we're just going to say 100, right? For 100%. So but that's standing for $10,000. So you have a management who takes 15%, right? And then you have a tour manager who gets paid usually weekly, but an example of $10,000 on a 6-week tour, he gets paid generally about $500 each day, equaling about $3,000. Okay, so out of 10,000, that is another 30%. Right? So that's another 30%. So then you have a merch person, 6 weeks. And that's another 6. So that's $100 a week, equals 600, just about another 10%. And so on. So if you have tech on top of that, that's another couple percentage. And then you have to give, this isn't all correctly accurate proportion, then you have to also give a percentage of your money back to your merchandise company for the shirts that you have. Generally, you're going to end up with about 5%. To split amongst all 5 members. So an example of $10,000. Oh, whoa. Aha. So an example of $10,000, you're going to end up with equals about 500. So 500 split 4 ways. Oh, I just realized. Was that not showing to everyone? Shit. Did anyone see my explanation? Probably not. That sucks. I'm sorry, guys. Anyways, so $10,000 after all said and done, you're probably going to make about $100 each. So, you can end a 6-week tour after paying for a tour manager, a front of house, a tech, a merch guy, paying for the management company, paying for the merchandise that you sold. So you have to spend back, 30 to 40% on the actual price of a shirt, all of that, etc. You end up with about $100 each. Being in a band is quite unprofitable. It's not until you end up getting closer to, $100,000 on a tour do you start equaling 1,000 each. And then when you get bigger and bigger, if you're probably the size of a band like Pierce the Veil, you're probably looking at more like, 5,000 or 6,000 in profit per tour. for a little of an explanation. It's not a very big money-making field, but if you decide it's worth it, that's what it is. But just so that you kind of understand. Any other questions? How could I get my band noticed to management? There's a lot of management companies out there. If you start messaging or start looking online to see the management companies that other acts work with, you can generally find managers that way. If you, like, for instance, Set It Off is on a company called Elderly Management. You can then do a submit to them there. You can try and talk to any act that you meet, ask them who their management company is, if they like them, if they have any sort of reference, similar to how you would think about getting signed to a label. Advice to someone who wants to open a venue. That's kind of a longer thing. Honestly, I suggest that you send me an email, austinmkerr@gmail.com. I can give you a little bit of pointers on that. I don't really want to get into all of that because that'll kind of take everyone's time, and I'm already taking a lot more time than I thought this would. Yes. So going a little bit back, a very good question. Don't some venues have their own front of houses? Also, did Set It Off have one? Okay, so one thing that I missed in here was talking about the ways that some of these jobs can be combined. Now, when you first start, there's about 4 or 5 people in a band, and they're going to fulfill the jobs of a tour manager, a merch person, a guitar tech, drum tech, front of house, all these, a driver, etc. A front of house and a monitor job is a job that a label or that a venue will actually hire. They'll have their own guy who'll do it. The reason why bigger acts will supply their own front of house is because when you're dealing with a venue guy, that's a guy who hears lots of different bands all day. So as far as his ability to hear the specifics of how a band should sound, he can have his ears be a little bit shot, a little bit it's like his palate isn't cleansed. If you ate a bunch of crazy different foods all day and you ate ice cream, it wouldn't taste as good as if you only ate a steak, then afterwards ate ice cream. So people bring their own front of house. Set It Off in later years started bringing their own front of house, but when bands first start, they usually will use venue-provided front of houses because they don't cost any money. Once you start touring more, you end up getting a tour manager, and instead of just all the people themselves. Now, a tour manager can also do a lot of other jobs, especially on a smaller tour where there aren't a lot of people that they're having to interact with. So, like Set It Off originally had Andrew, who was a tour manager and photographer who would take photos of us as well as do the tour managing. He is a crazy guy who's very, very proactive and very busy. So he eventually ended up learning how to do front of house. So he was doing tour managing, front of house, and photography. Andrew also operated as Set It Off day-to-day at our management company. That's a whole nother story. But you'll very often find a tour manager front of house because during a band's performance, that's the one time a tour manager really doesn't have to do anything. Once you have bigger acts, he might be trying to figure out a lot of logistics for the day while a band's performing, so he can't do front of house anymore. But when you're smaller, when you're playing 500 to 1,000 people a show, generally you'll find tour managers / front of house. Or a tour manager / a guitar tech. In that same scheme, you often have, on a very large act, a guitar tech, a couple of general techs, a drum tech, etc. And then on a very small act, you'll find a member or two of a band who will be doing those jobs. In the in-between, you'll have maybe one general tech who's really a guitar tech who's just kind of helping out everyone. So all of the jobs escalate and come down as, you progress. How would you present yourself to a management company? Now, you present yourself to a management company in the same, it's really similar to what you think you would do with a label. A lot of it really is about connections. Sending out your EP to a bunch of people is really rarely going to actually get you somewhere because a lot of people do it. You have to be creative and figure out a way to present yourself specifically to those people. it's also important for you to try to make yourself as already managed as possible. So, make sure that all of your, in my previous webinar, it went about how to kind of construct your own image as a band, how to make sure that all of your media and, your social media and all that look professional. Having professional recordings isn't as important. Having good songs or good song structure that they can see, oh, well, I can develop this into something great is good. But more they want to see, like, from the actual artists themselves, that they have the potential to be stars, to be to build a fan base, to have that, kind of look or that feel that they think someone else could latch onto. Show that if they put a bunch of hours of work into developing that artist, that would end up with an artist who has a lot of fans and therefore makes them a lot of money. The money comes from mainly merchandise. Merchandising is about 70% of an artist's income. You don't make as much money from your songs anymore because of, the internet and Spotify and stuff like that don't really pay you very well, but they do help you have more fans. The more fans you have, the more you have merchandise, shirts, necklaces, bracelets, selling meet and greets, all that sort of stuff is really where you get 80% of the money you get. 70% of that money then goes to all the people who make everything happen. You can do it, some of the jobs yourself as you go on. But as you get bigger and bigger, there's more and more work to be done, while 5 people might be able to handle everything for a band that's has 10,000 fans, a band that has 500,000 fans might need 20 people. All that money has to come from somewhere. That money comes from the band. Yes, generally band members get about 5% to split, so they get about 1% of the money that comes in. Sometimes, depending on how frugal the band is, frugal meaning like thrifty, like how many jobs they're willing to do, and how tired and all that stuff they're willing to make themselves in order to save on hiring some of these positions. That can be more like 5% to each member of the money that comes in. But generally, until you have an artist that's pretty large, that percentage is going to be about that. Okay. So with a lot of these jobs, the music industry is one of the most corrupt things that has really ever existed. So you kind of end up with a couple different. A manager is someone who's good at talking, really. Someone who has lots of connections, lots of friends, can make people think that an act is bigger than they are. That's what you want. You want someone who can walk up to, Fall Out Boy and convince him that a band is big enough to be worth something to that tour, or that they're going to be in a couple of years. That's what a good manager is. Someone who can go and talk to a label and convince them that your act's going to be huge. So someone who they're good at talking themselves up. You'll often find, I'd say probably 5 to 1, 5 shitty managers to every 1 good manager. That instead of that manager spending all this time talking up that act and really making sure that that artist's career is going where it needs to be, instead he'll just be talking himself up to the act in which to get a static 15% of everything that comes in. Managers often get paid more than band members because a manager gets paid a gross commission, right? So he gets 15% of everything, whereas an artist will get a percentage of what's left after paying everyone else. So that's a net commission. Kind of messed up, and you really have to be careful. Manager can really be a huge difference, especially if you're an artist who has no idea what you're doing. If you have no idea what you're doing, talk to a lot of people, and I really suggest talking to bands, finding out if they have a manager they like. Don't just assume, since a band's huge, that they had a good manager. They might have had a shitty manager. But if you talk to people, if you ask questions, you can find someone who actually will care. and will put all of their attention and really like associate their success with that artist's success, in which case a manager can be great. Excuse me. Okay, so to continue on, at a management company, you often find, you sometimes find one guy who is the big picture, the day-to-day, does the endorsements, sometimes does in-house graphic design, and will kind of do everything for an artist. That can be really great because you have someone who really is putting all of his time into you, as opposed to dividing his time for you by 20 artists. You don't know if he's going to put your needs above another act. So having a smaller management company that maybe has one or two people from it can be good for those reasons. But generally, smaller management companies have less experience. They usually haven't already gotten an act super huge. So they might not actually know how to get you to where you're trying to go. So it's a big trust factor getting on a management company, because you're really putting your career in someone's hands, and you're trusting that they're actually going to do everything they're saying. They're actually going to work as hard as they're saying. That's what a management company is. So then with a label, sometimes on smaller labels, you might have an A&R who also does some graphic design. You might have an A&R who is the owner. A lot of different things. Generally, bare bones, you're going to find a separate A&R, an owner, in-house graphic. You'll have an in-house publicist often. This isn't someone, any in-house job, a graphic artist or a publicist, is not something that you have to use, but it is something that is free to use. So they might have for instance, a company might have a graphic artist who is really good at hardcore stuff. He makes really good graphics that look for hardcore bands. He might make, shirts that are for hardcore bands, a lot of different things. And if you were a band that's like an indie band, you might go, okay, well, it's great that this guy will do things for free, but I know I can get the result I want if I go and I pay someone who's specifically good at indie graphic design. Good example. Another thing is a publicist. A publicist is someone whose job it is to get you magazine articles, featured in magazines themselves, does like press releases, gets websites to talk about you, gets you on interviews, all those publicity jobs. Often labels will have an in-house publicist, but again, that publicist works for all the acts or a lot of the acts on the company. So they might not, again, have your specific best interest in mind. If there's, if alternative press talks to the publicist and says, I'm going to give someone I'm looking to give a Fearless band a feature in this magazine, that publicist has to therefore decide between all their acts who it's for. Doesn't necessarily work that way, but again, depending on your relationship with that publicist, how much they like you, how much they believe in your career, how much they think that you're going to bring to the label, will really affect whether or not you want to continue working with that in-house person or not. So then you have someone who's usually in charge of accounts. This will sometimes be an A&R who does this, but this is the person who sends you an email. Okay, cool, we sent you 5,000 CDs. We need $5 per CD. So, you buy CDs wholesale. They'll sell you for a tour. I want 100 CDs. Okay, well, I'll sell you that for $500. You can keep all the profits. That's what a label says to a band. So there's someone from accounts who will send out the royalty checks and also ask for the money that comes back into the label for what the band sells that the label owns. Then you have distribution, which is what a label does. They're a liaison between artists and a distribution company. The distribution companies are owned by major labels. I'm going to go into that next. Oh, wow, this is really taking forever. I'm sorry, guys. Hopefully you're staying interested. So then artist development will usually be done a little bit by a management company and then done a lot by a label, depending on where the artist is. So if you have an artist that doesn't have as much of a fan base, or maybe has a fan base but is more of like a niche artist, like a really weird artist that has, purple hair that goes up that way and yells at everyone all the time, the label might take that artist through artist development. which is where they go with him and talk about different ways or things that he can do that might appeal to a larger fan base, or kind of figuring out. That's like something that some artists feel weird about, because they feel they want their image and the music to be a certain way. Some artists welcome some help figuring out what the fuck they're doing. Can be a good or a bad thing. Good, that's awesome. Okay, so then you have imprints. So that is a lot of imprints aren't super famous. Oh, one imprint that actually was pretty famous is Decadence Records. So there's Fall Out Boy, he was signed to Fueled by Ramen. And then below that, you end up having Decadence, right? So that's, I'm going to explain labels a little bit more. So the way that a label works is a label has someone who bankrolls them. So they have an owner who has a lot of money. Or they took out a giant loan, I don't know. And then when they sign an artist, they agree to give that artist a certain amount of money to spend on things. Some of that has to be paid back via the royalties. Like if a band goes and puts out an album that costs $10,000 to make, that $10,000 has to be paid back to the label via the proceeds of the relationship. Generally, that's out of a percentage that the artist makes. So like if you sign a contract, this would be like a really good deal, honestly. But if you sign a contract where you get 20% of everything of your music, right? So you sell $100 worth of songs, you get $20 back. If that album costs $10 to make, you would first have to pay that $10 back to the label via your royalties before you start getting all the rest of your money. Meanwhile, the label will make their money that whole time. They'll make their, $80 from it continuously. That's the constructs of a general deal. So from there, the label will then take that that album that they paid for, and they'll try to distribute it through one of 4 companies. Those 4 companies are referred to as Capitol EMI, right? So Capitol /EMI, Sony BMG, WEA WMG, which is Warner Music Group, UNI UMG, which is Universal Music Group, right? So there's 4 companies. Often referred to just as EMI, BMG, WMG, and UMG. So pretty much every single label, every indie label, every major label distributes through these parent companies. They're not owned by them, but they have usually exclusivity deals signed with them, and that company also makes a percentage of the money that comes in. So, man, this has now been an hour. Aha. So, an imprint is when a label will give an artist their own ability to sign acts, usually through approval of the actual label owner, but they'll have their own name. So that's where Decadence came in. Decadence was given to Pete Wentz. Okay, we think that you can have a good decision to sign artists, control their careers. We'll let you go through our already made channel of, I believe, EMI, and we'll just make, a large percentage of the money that you're making. We'll give you the initial investment. We'll give you everything. You just go into management and you'll get some money yourself. Later, Decadence or whatever did separate from Fueled by Ramen and become their own label themselves, but that's how that starts. Right, so that's an imprint. There's an imprint owned by Max Bemis of Say Anything from Equal Vision called Warrior Records. That's what that is. So you can get a distribution deal as an independent artist. A famous example of this is Macklemore. It can be really hard. You have to really prove that you are going to create a large volume. That's what distribution companies deal in. They don't care about the artist on a company. They go, oh, well, I'm going to sell 100,000 units per year from this client, this label. So if you're an artist and you want to get a distribution deal, it's possible, but you generally have to be making enough album sales that you can warrant the company working with you. They don't deal with small business. They don't care because they just make a small percentage of a very large pot. So then you have separate publicity agencies from labels. This is just a company. Sometimes it'll be someone from a label who works with other artists outside of the label. They also make a percentage, generally off net percentage off of everything you make, 10, 5, 15%, in addition to the management company. This can be really good if you get one person specifically who's going to work for your career really hard. He'll use all of his connections to get you in front of a lot of faces, so it can be worth it. But you have to really know, and you have to decide you're going for that. An unsigned act, again, I'm going to use Macklemore, can make a good career. Day to Remember has also chosen to do this path, and they're, after they got their success with Victory Records, and they got out of that contract, they have a management company, Fly South, who deals with their distribution because they already are, selling so many units. They have their own publicity agent. They have their management company, because a lot of those lines, a lot of what you think a label does is actually management. Management company with a distribution deal can actually make an artist pretty successful if you have a management company that really is working hard for that artist, that really believes and knows that that artist is going to have success and enough success for the management company. There's a lot of different variations in here, but generally you have an artist, and then you have a manager, and then you have everything else. That's why it's really important to have someone who's good, and you don't necessarily have to have a manager. You can have an artist who just deals with everyone directly, but you have to really know what you're doing. You have to have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, because it'd be really easy for you to piss off someone, have them bomb your tour, not physically bomb, but have a booking agent not care anymore. There's a lot of different things that could happen if you don't know what you're doing. Or you might make a big decision to work with one company, which could piss off another company. You could decide to work with an outsourced publicist, piss off your label's publicist, and then have your outsourced publicist suck and take all of your money. Bad things can happen if you don't know what you're doing. From there, I go into a booking agency. So a booking agency is someone who's hired to specifically book an artist on tour. Book him shows. Sometimes a publicist and an agent will work together to get something like the iHeart Music Festival. Will probably be a combination job. Well, really a combination job between the management company and the label and the publicist and the booking agent. But a booking agent is the one who negotiates those deals, who negotiates, all right, well, here's the flights that are going to come in. This is how much you're going to give the artist for food. This is how much you're going to give him on top of the things. You have to provide $1,000 worth of equipment for him to be able to perform. These are all these bigger deals. But a booking agent can also be the first person you get. Generally, acts will either get a booking agent first or a management company first. Because a booking agency can simply go, okay, cool, you're an act. You're all right. You have some online fans. Well, let me book you some shows around America. Let me book you a 2-week Florida tour. You go out, you'll play. Generally, a lot of people will say that a booking agent is like the only fairly paid person in the music industry, because a booking agent generally only makes 10, 15, 20% of the shows he booked, and only of the guarantees. So a venue will pay an artist $100 to perform. That booking agent will get 20% of that, so $20. He booked one show, he got $20 exchange. When you have an artist that they've worked with for a long time, guarantee might be $10,000. That booking agent will then get $2,000 exchanged. At a booking agency, generally there's really just an agent. Sometimes they'll have an assistant, so he'll be like, the bigger guy who's making sure that you're getting on tours with other acts. And he'll also be booking some of the shows themselves. Then he'll have his assistant message all the promoters, refine all the deals, make sure that all of the forms, all of the W-9s, like the tax forms and things like that, are sent, do a little bit of that administrative work. And then all of that will be sent to a tour manager about 1 to 2 months before the tour starts. That's when a tour manager takes over, starts being in contact with those promoters, if you want to get on a band's show, the one to talk to is the booking agent, generally. You talk to somebody, you might talk to the booking agent, will then talk to the local promoter, will then talk to, who will then put a band on the show. But if you talk to a local promoter, especially on bigger shows, he'll have to get that artist approved by the booking agent. As far as bands on shows, booking agent is a huge role in that. So then my last subject in here is publishing. So publishing, there's 3 companies really that anyone uses. It's called ASCAP, BMI, and SECAC, SSAC, right? So ASCAP, ASCAP, BMI, just BMI, and ESSAC, SSAC. Those are the companies that will help you to get played at movies, have your song played on TV shows, in a store like Journeys, to divide a little bit. There's these companies which are the publishing companies that collect money, and then you might have your own, similar to a booking agency, similar to any of those things, your own publishing company. Publishing company can also help you, like a smaller one, can also help you get your song sold to someone. So if you decide that you're really good at writing, but don't want to perform, don't want to, or don't think you have what it takes to perform, maybe you are ugly or something, or you just don't think you have what it takes, but you can write amazing songs, you can sign specifically to a publishing company. That company will reach out to managers, to labels, and show your songs to those people and go, hey, maybe Fall Out Boy would like to perform or put, Red Pen by Sandra on their album. Maybe they'll rewrite it, maybe they'll change a couple of things around. But this is how you get people like Britney Spears who have their songs written for them. They're written for them by ghostwriters, which is one term. There's a lot of terms for that job. They'll get written by ghostwriters via a publishing company. A publishing company is a company that will negotiate that connection. And then the company that will be collecting the money for that is called BMI, ASCAP, or SSAC. You can only sign up with one of them. So all of them collect money from everyone who's playing music, whether it's on the radio, on a Journeys, on a movie. They all collect all this money, all this publishing money, and then they distribute it to the artists that are signed up with them based on the percentage in which that song is played of the entire ASCAP's discography. It's really confusing exactly how that works, but if you think it's played a lot, you get money from these companies if you sign up with them. It's really good to sign up with these companies. There's really no downside. You just have to kind of decide on one. There's a couple different legalities of one company versus another, why some people like one company versus another, how good their accounting is, if they're going to screw you out of any money. But those are all of the general jobs in the music industry. So this is the question portion. If anyone has any questions about anything I talked about, feel free to ask me. This chat will be ending in about 5 minutes. Question. Okay. I'm studying music business and festival management in college. I'm doing internships, I'm volunteering at festivals and stuff, but I still have no idea how to become a tour manager. There's no offer for such a job here. Plus, I'm a girl, so any advice? Okay, so this is the thing about the music industry. School really will not help you get a job. I'm not saying don't go to school. I'm not saying don't go to school for things in the music industry. I would say that often getting degrees in things that give you similar skills can be more useful. Someone who has a degree in money management or accounting. I've seen a lot of those people get tour manager jobs because they specifically are just good with money. The number one way to get a tour manager job is to like volunteer work. Honestly, is a great way. You start volunteering, be friendly with the bands. Especially initially, you're going to be hired because someone likes you as a friend. Sometimes more, but really, no. A lot of artists won't, especially people who don't know what they're doing, won't hire anyone unless they are just, normal friends, knowing that they, kind of prove that they're trustworthy, that they're a good drinking buddy, or, anything like that, that you're fun to be around, easygoing. If you go and you volunteer at festivals and you end up interacting with bands, end up hanging out with them backstage, aren't, very fanny, are, a nice person to be around. They see you going around and, telling, showing some of the attributes of a tour manager, showing responsibility, showing an ability to be friendly, but also stern, if you can be talking, oh yeah, you're fun, whatever. And then you see someone who's going with their friends they shouldn't, you run up to them and go, hey, get down right now. You can't be here. To a band, they might see that and go, oh, wow, that person is pretty good at, controlling situations. That's really what a tour manager has to be able to do. They have to be responsible, good with money, and good at controlling situations, because shit happens all the time. You could be driving and, tire blows out. That's the tour manager's job, to get you back running, to get your van to a repair shop, call the tow truck, to book the hotels, figure out how you're going to get to the show on time still, or, get in touch with the venue, push things back. All of that is on the tour manager. Or if you're, artist backstage and someone jumps over a fence and runs back down there and starts, throwing water guns at them or trying to get them to sign a bunch of things. That's the tour manager's job to handle that. So if you can show that you have those types of skills in front of an artist, then they might be likely, if they don't already have someone in their mind that they are going to bring as a tour manager, especially as they're coming up, as they're like, you really want to do this for smaller acts. You're not going to show that Fall Out Boy they're responsible and they're going to take you to be a tour manager. That's not ever going to happen. You often will start as a merch person for a smaller act. So if you become friends with an act that plays 50 kids a night, start doing merch for them, show that you're really responsible, good at handling situations. They might upgrade you to a tour manager spot. Maybe that act will continue to grow. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll go on tour with another band. They'll see you excelling at your job as they get bigger. Maybe that act that 100 kids a show band was on tour with, who only drew 20, a year later is drawing 300 kids. That person might now go, okay, yeah, well, who's a good tour manager? We blew up so fast, we don't really know. Oh yeah, well, Sarah, she, tour managed Weather Sound and she was killing it. So maybe we'll hire her. Kind of go up the corporate ladder. You really just have to work your ass off. You have to show that you're super responsible, yet easy to get along with, that you have a good sense of order, and you'll get more work just by being great, because there's a lot of people who suck. And I don't know, that's really the only way to do that. Yes, you can email me for a one-on-one session. My email, I don't actually know how to list that. So yeah, austinmkerr@gmail.com is my email. You can email me for a one-on-one lesson. It costs $40 per hour, and I will kind of go through what you're trying to do. There's something called an admin scale, which is really helpful for getting you somewhere. But yeah, I do offer private lessons in this sort of stuff. Private sessions. It wouldn't really be a lesson. Anyway, we can contact you outside of the chat to discuss further. Yes, like I said, austinmkerr@gmail.com. So just my name, same thing as the website URL, austinmkerr@gmail.com. Hubbing tours. I don't know what a hubbing tour is. Please find that in by sending another question. Yeah, I plan on continuing music. I've been kind of trying to get the basic stuff back together. I just finally, after realizing I had to apply for jobs with my middle name, finally got a job. So yeah, kind of moving back up. I'll probably get into band management at some point. Hopefully do something more musical and getting back on tour. Obviously I know a little bit of what I'm doing, so hopefully it wouldn't take 7 years to get where I was. But yeah, I would love to. Anyone else have any questions? One other thing to talk about is I have my next webinar, which is a paid one, which is, sorry, 1 second. Okay. Webinar. Sorry. So my next webinar, is called, is going to be on how to self-book a tour. I'll go through, it'll be a little bit shorter than this one. It is another paid one for $19.95. I will go over some of the basic jobs of kind of like the process, the mindset, the way that you construct these emails to people, the way you get in touch with venues, that for places you aren't from, the way to kind of present your stats so that you can get shows. This isn't how to, play to 1,000 kids tomorrow or something, but this is how, if you have a band, you've been trying to figure out, how do I just go on tour? This is the basics of, the process you can go through. It's a lot of work, but if you want to know just what that process is, maybe you want to just figure out, okay, well, do I want to go through this, or do I really want to try and find a booking agent at this point? Just sign up for a webinar. You can find out all the information about it and then kind of make an informed decision from there. Hubbling tours as where a group has a hub city and travels to cities in the surrounding areas or shows. Oh, okay. Really, that's something that used to happen. I mean, if you're in the UK, it's very different. Very different in the UK versus the US. So if you're in the UK, then that might be something that you would kind of want to do. In the US, like, yeah, it's a good idea to do like 2 or 3, localized tours, weekend runs, something like that, kind of figure out what you're doing. But after that, if you really want to get anywhere, you have to fucking go for it. You have to go on tour, lose, $2,000. Really figure out if you're, like, you won't really know if it's even worth the investment of time if your group of people can actually stand to do that until you go on a shitty tour for a month. So, I mean, I would really suggest doing a couple to kind of figure out, all right, this is how you run a show. This is what it's like to get to a venue on time. This is, who's going to do what job. And then from there, just figure out a long tour that you're probably going to lose some money on, but gain so much experience and have mostly a really good time. You will definitely get better at bass. The question was, any tips for an aspiring bassist? How long did it take you to get good at it? I had my first lesson literally yesterday, and I'm nervous about whether or not I'll get better. You will get better. It does take a while. I've been playing bass for, 14 years. Yeah, 14 years. So it's a long time. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time and attention and effort and everything, but it is worth it. I suggest really learning about hand positioning and practicing your scales. There's a lot of really good
drills like spider drills, learn about your octaves. But just stay at it. Stay at it, and get a SansAmp. Number one thing, purchase a SansAmp. No matter what you're doing, what genre, whatever, just buy a SansAmp. It's this little pedal that makes everything sound great. The last 3 Set It Off albums were just recorded with just a bass and a SansAmp. No amp, no real anything. It's pretty cheap. I think they're like $100 new. Buy a SansAmp. Number one tip for basses. I would not recommend waiting. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of energy. I suggest finishing school for sure. Definitely finish school. Do not drop out of high school by any means. Just stupid. It's like a fucking year. Fuck it. And then you have it, and it's good. And I'm not saying go to college necessarily, but finish fucking high school. But you should start, because it's going to take a while to really get off your feet. And getting off your feet when you're still in high school is a lot better than doing it when you're now having to work a full-time job and trying to move out and trying to, once all those things happen, it's a lot harder to get off your feet. So I suggest starting now. That's awesome. I'm glad that I'm reading the comments. I'm glad that people enjoyed this. Please sign up for my next webinar, even if it doesn't necessarily pertain to you. It'd be really cool knowledge to have, and it can be really helpful if you have other friends who are musicians. You can impress them by telling them, what they're doing, or maybe even get into booking. I'll also be emailing all of you asking for a referral or a oh god, I forgot the word. I've been doing so well. Something that says if you liked it, I can't remember, a review. We asked you guys for reviews, something that I can put on my site to show that, if you go and pay for one of my paid webinars, you'll be getting a lot of good knowledge, a lot of helpful knowledge, helping you on your career in the music industry. Can you type the name of the thing you suggested for aspiring bassist? I don't understand. Yes, it is a SansAmp. It is a small, tiny pedal that makes everything sound wonderful. And I can go into it for days on exactly what it does. No, I can't. It's really simple. You just plug your thing into it, you put power into it, and you plug a cable into it that goes out of it into an amp or into a computer for recording, for a million things. Just that little box. It's called a preamp. It modifies the sound from the amp before it goes, or from the bass before it goes into an amp. Preamp, SansAmp, buy it. Everyone should have one if you play bass. I'm sorry there's no equivalent for guitarists. That sucks for you. Anyways, so this is the end of the webinar. Hopefully everyone learned some great things. I'll be emailing you asking for a review. And I will be hopefully seeing you guys around. Thanks.